Unable to resist, he was thrown back hard. His body hit the rock wall, creating a huge impact that sent many pieces of rock flying everywhere. Tri saw that and breathed a sigh of relief. Thinking that he could easily defeat Bin, he stood tall, raised one hand and continued to gather strength, with a proud look on his face. How about Bin? Do you have anything else to say now? A few of his henchmen stood by and cheered. The young master was amazing. He was still able to use magical energy at such a young age. His future would definitely be immeasurable. Suddenly Bing's voice spoke. Tri family, haven't you eaten yet? It turned out that after that punch, Bin was hit on a rock but was still completely healed. He stood up, brushed the dust off his shirt and criticized, "Your fists are so weak, you don't have any strength at all." Tri's whole body felt like it was on fire when he saw that scene. He screamed in anger, "You want to die." Bin didn't pay attention to what he said but suddenly ran straight through the door leading into the mine. Tri refused to give up and chased after him. Bin stopped for me, stopped. The henchman behind him called out to him to stop him but it was useless. One guy wondered, shouldn't we go in there and help the young master? The other guy explained that this is Mac Dai Jia's territory. In honor of the Tri family, he will not make things difficult for the young master, but if we go there, we will be killed. The entrance to the mine is illuminated by lights installed in a system above the walkway. The sound of Tri looking for Bin has not stopped. Bin, don't hide anymore. He approached a place with a railway, his voice still booming, "No matter what, you have to die. I will let you die comfortably." Tri had to cover his eyes with his hand because the light from the lamp was too bright and made his eyes uncomfortable. He thought that Bin was bad at using those lamps. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Bin appeared. He jumped high in the air, with sharp eyes and a fiery body, one hand raised, preparing to give Tri a refreshing blow. Tri was surprised but was lucky to avoid it. Bin's blow caused a huge force to the ground. While he was in chaos, Tri's hand continued to throw another punch at him. Bin also quickly slid back and clasped his hands together to block the attack. Tri looked disdainful, "You only know how to sneak attack." The fire in Bin's hand gradually melted in front of his surprise. Seeing that, Tri was overwhelmed by the tide. The Demon King's power could smash mountains and rocks, and was directly defeated by this kid. Immediately after that, he continued to raise his fist, preparing to rush towards Bin, sounding smug as if he had won. "It was my turn." It was as if his powerful fist had been gently grabbed by Bin. Tri Lin turned his hand to catch his wrist, then he used his knee to hit Bin in the stomach, causing him to collapse. Seeing Bin's defeated appearance, he stood with his hands on his hands and spoke to him in a classroom voice. "Don't think that by learning a little yin and yang technique you can be invincible in the world. Based on your little experience, you can only be hung up and beaten by me." Bin is squatting, but it's not because he was defeated. Collapsed. After hearing Tri's words, he smiled slightly and asked again, "So?" After that, Bin stood up straight, causing Tri to be startled, brushing away the stains on his shirt, his voice full of arrogance. "I really have no experience in actual combat. I'll deal with whoever I want to fight in a second." Tri could not stand Bin's wild words and rushed towards him, threatening to break his neck. But this time Bin quickly grabbed his wrist as soon as he got close. At this moment, the power of the Demon King in him burst out strongly. A dark purple flame flared up in Bin's hand. He rolled his eyes at Tri, gritted his teeth, and "Today I will tell you that in the face of absolute strength, you absolutely cannot withstand a single blow." Bin then without hesitation twisted Tri's wrist, causing his wrist to crack. The extreme pain made Tri unable to bear it and had to collapse in front of Bin. He kept screaming. His face became more and more contorted and his mouth screamed in pain. Bin had to let go of his wrist, while Tri was still shaking from the pain in his wrist. Anger flared in Bin's eyes. "I think, although you were jealous of me, you were sincere towards Gao, but I was wrong, you harmed her." The fire of hatred made Diu Bin unable to accept the person who harmed Ti Gao. Even if God had to die, he angrily raised his fist to prepare to teach Ui Tri a lesson. The scene changes to a certain hospital in the city. There seems to be a fight going on. The sound of a crash is heard, followed by someone's angry voice, "Go away." They come from a room so loud that the doctors and nurses standing outside were confused and didn't know what was going on inside, but they didn't dare to come closer when, in addition to cursing death, they also heard the sound of banging on the door, loud screams, and the whole atmosphere became extremely chaotic. In the room, Ui Tri was lying on the bed with one arm and one right leg bandaged. It turned out that the terrible sounds just now were caused by Ui Tri. The vase on the table was broken, and a lot of water flowed around. But he didn't seem to calm down, one hand clenched tightly, shouting, "Damn it." An assistant standing nearby tried to calm him down in fear. "Young master, don't be angry," the doctor said. "Your limbs can be treated." His face wrinkled and he gritted his teeth in anger as he looked at his trembling hand trying to hold it together because of what the doctor said. Ui Tri's hands will never be able to recover to their peak state, which means he cannot fully utilize the power of his punches. The assistant stood staring at Ui Tri, not knowing what to do but stand and wipe his sweat. Opposite Ui Tri's bed was a beam of power. It was from an enchantment talisman posted outside the room's door. He shouted angrily again, "Diu Bin, do you think you can lock me up like this?" The scene changes to another room of Ui Tri's family. We hear the heavy sigh of Ui Tri's father. He sat on the chair, his hand raised to caress, looking uneasy when his son did not say a word but suddenly disappeared. He completely did not know where his son was. Suddenly the door opened. Stepping inside was a servant coming to announce, "Mr. Ngauthin, there is a guy outside saying he knows the whereabouts of the young master. Do you want to see him?" Hearing that, he immediately agreed because he thought it might be Ui Tri's subordinates coming to report that he was safe. The person who came to meet him was none other than Diu Bin. He entered Ngauthin's room when the servant bowed politely and pointed in the direction for him, asking him to go this way. As soon as he entered the room, Ngauthin, sitting opposite him, immediately asked, "Young man, do you know where the young master is now?" He observed Diu Bin and felt suspicious when he saw his appearance as a high school student. Diu Bin affirmed that he knew. Then he frankly answered about what had happened. "Furthermore, I also knew that I had broken the arms and legs of the Ui Tri family. He's being treated at Duong Quang Bin Hai Hospital. If you want to find him, go there." Hearing that, Ngauthin couldn't help but jump up in shock. "What did you say?" Diu Bin did not deny it but gave additional conditions. "In addition, I give you 1 week's time to find a magician named Gun Koi Lak and hand it over to me, and at the same time guarantee, within 2 months, to regain the power of the enemy. Lieutenant Tri family, and get out of Ben Hai." He heard Diu Bin's wild and arrogant way of talking and immediately sneered, "Young man, saying these words, I'm afraid he's looking down on our Ui Tri family." Immediately, 2 of his subordinates appeared behind Diu Bin, ready to deal with him. Diu Bin put his hand on the back of his neck again. He cracked his neck and made a cracking sound, thinking that this was interesting when someone who didn't know how to measure himself wanted to fight him. A moment later, the scene before his eyes made Ngauthin panic and have to beg Diu Bin not to fight anymore. The other 2 subordinates lay curled up on the ground because he had beaten them to a pulp. Diu Bin stood and looked towards Ngauthin. With a warning tone, "I said again, first, find Gun Koi Lak. Second, get out of Ben Hai. How about it? Do you have any other problems?" Ngauthin was angry but couldn't do anything. He stood up, clenched his hands, stammering and asked who he really was. Diu Bin did not answer but immediately used a move to destroy his iron door. The whole door could not stand it and immediately cracked. He walked to the cracked door, looked back at Ngauthin, then he introduced himself. "I am Diu Bin. If you have the courage and want to take revenge, just find me." In the smoke and dust of the ruins, the guy wearing glasses gestured and asked, "Master, do you need to send someone to follow him and secretly ask him if he didn't?" Old man Ui Tri was extremely angry and said, "He dares to come to Ui Tri family to cause trouble. There must be support behind him. You should go find out what this guy Diu Bin's background is. Who is the person behind him? The guy wearing glasses heard the name Diu Bin and was immediately surprised. Is he Diu Bin? Old Master Ui Tri asked in surprise. How do you know him? The guy wearing glasses told the story. Old man, he just returned from abroad. Of course he didn't know. In the last 2 months, a little Diu family appeared in Binhai, named Diu Bin. It is said that he is proficient in yin and yang magic, is a distinguished guest of the Mak Jia and Fuang Jia, and there are rumors that some of the big men in Jiangcheng also highly respect him. Old Lieutenant Tri couldn't help but be shocked. Is that so? Get ready, I'm going to visit Mak Tan Tong. In Mak Jia's living room, a voice rang out. And Gao Thin, why are you here? Old Master Ui Tri, also known as Ui Tri and Gao Thin, replied. I recently got some nutritious food. Thinking that I haven't seen you for a long time, I'm afraid that our feelings will be separated, so I brought some gifts, old man. Please don't criticize me, Mo Tan Tong happily said. What are you talking about? The Mak family and the Ui Tri family have had a relationship for many years. How could they be separated? Ui Tri and Gao Thin was a little embarrassed but still said, if he comes out since you said so, I'll say it straight. Actually I came today because I wanted to. Before the words were finished, Mak Tan Tong interrupted. He told Le Suyen, go get the best tea here to entertain in Gao Thin. Le Suyen bowed and replied, yes old man. Then she approached Ui Tri and Gao Thin, used her hand to hold him down, and told elder Ui Tri to sit down first. I'll go make you some tea now. Le Suyen's actions scared Win Tri and Gao Thin. He just hesitated for a moment. Time passed until half an hour later. Ui Tri and Gao Thin held the cup of tea without being in the mood to enjoy it, he thought. This Mak Tan Tong always tries to avoid it. Perhaps he wants to protect Diu Bin. If he really can't, he can only invite his father to come forward. Mak Tan Tong glanced over to look at Ui Tri and Gao Thin. He put down the teacup and then spoke. That's right, and Gao Thin, did you come to see me today? Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin saw the opportunity and immediately said, without hiding anything from you, Tiu Jia has lost contact with the family for several days. This time I came here to invite Le Then to help and find out his news. Mak Tan Tong immediately agreed. Okay. Now I will call my second son and definitely ask him to help you find Tiu Jia. Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin achieved his goal. He clasped his hands and said, Old master, then I won't bother you anymore. Mak Tan Tong did not forget to comfort him. Tiu Jia has always been careful. It will definitely be okay. You think too much. Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin left the Bakufu. Le Suyen behind waved goodbye. Lieutenant Tri Lao Jia, go at ease. The wind blew aimlessly, under the falling leaves. Le Suyen spoke his judgment. This Tian and Gao Thin wanted to use the relationship between the two families to force the old man to choose. That was too bold. Inside the Mak family, a loud noise rang out. Mak Tan Tong angrily called out, where are you? He immediately called his second son and asked him about Ui Tri Jia's situation. He ordered in anger, telling the eldest son to come here and meet me. Suddenly a scream rang out, kneel down for me. Mak Le Suyen was confused by Mak Tan Tong's anger. He quickly knelt down and asked, Dad, what happened? What did you do wrong? Mak Tan Tong coldly snorted, how dare you ask, if not? Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin came to find me, but I didn't know you created that cave in Thin Du. Mak Le Suyen looked panicked. He raised his voice in fear. Dad, please calm down. Speak slowly. I really don't understand what you're saying. He was polite on the outside, but inside he was thinking. The old man finally knew what was going on. Why was he suddenly so angry? Mak Tan Tong rubbed the bridge of his nose. You don't bother to say much. You even pretend to be stupid with me. So let you listen. Le Suyen was holding a book next to her. She listened and said yes. Le Suyen gave Mak Le Suyen the book in his hand and said, this is the outside property of the tycoon. One part is under your name, the other part is under your wife's name. Mak Le Suyen reached out to receive the book in silence. When he opened the book, he lost his nerve. Le Suyen also added that there were a number of other assets in the names of several unrelated people. Le Suyen also conscientiously showed the place to Mac. Le Suyen, boss, please see this place. You used to buy a villa in the name of your subordinates. Giving it to a young girl to live, Mac. Le Suyen immediately argued, she and I have no relationship, just your daughter, just helping a little. Le Suyen slightly frowned, she asked a question, but not long before that, the girl left the villa, and brought a man named Gun Koi Lak to live. Mac Tontong immediately questioned his son, that name Gun Koi Lak, is he your person, right? Mac. Le Suyen called his father. Mac Tontong said dejectedly, you don't need to explain, I told the second guy to investigate. This guy Gun Koi Lak wants to kill Du Bin. You dare say these things have nothing to do with you? He stood up and said what he knew. Not long ago, Gun Koi Lak joined forces with Lieutenant Trijia to plot to assassinate Du Bin, but could not carry it out. Lieutenant Trijia was also seriously injured. Now, not only did you offend Du Bin, you also offended Lieutenant Trijia. How could you do such a stupid thing? I'm really disappointed. Mac. Le Suyen was startled, he shouted, have you disappointed me? Mac. Le Suyen loudly patted his chest. When you abandoned your eldest son and left your property to Tigao, do you know how desperate I was? After listening, Mac Tontong finally understood. He nodded and said, good, indeed because of this. He turned away dejectedly and said to Le Suyen, A2, you help me summon the great families in Binhai. I want to announce it in front of everyone. From now on, Mac. Le Suyen and Mac Jia will no longer have any relationship. Le Suyen immediately replied, yes, sir. Mac. Le Suyen quickly hugged his father's leg. He screamed in panic, my father said that because he was angry, don't do that. A hand patted Mac. Le Suyen's shoulder. Le Suyen approached. She said with a dark face, Mr. Mac, please don't force me to hit you, at the first high school. The sound of knocking on the table rang out. A gentle voice called Du Bin. The voice belonged to a girl. She stood in front of Du Bin's desk and asked, do you want to go see a movie with me? Du Bin immediately picked up his bag and replied, otherwise I have to go home. Hearing that, the girl was angry and scolded, not knowing how to behave. Du Bin returned home. He opened the door and said, your mother is home. Du Bin's mother replied warmly, son, you are home. At the same time Trong Hu Boy heard his voice and immediately turned to look. She pulled her hair, smiled brightly and said, Du Bin, welcome home. Du Bin blushed. He didn't know what else to say. He just said oh yes and said hello back. Then he went into the house, not forgetting to say, go back to your room first. When it's time to eat, tell auntie to call you. The bag was dropped on the floor. Du Bin lay on the bed with his legs crossed, thinking. After Aunt Hoang had the surgery, her body felt much better. I took her and my mother to Nen Tan Fu. He was immersed in his thoughts when he accidentally discovered that the soul in the underworld could be brought to earth. Recalling the previous scene, Du Bin continued to think, meaning that as long as he stays in this villa, he understands that he can live normally like everyone else. Thinking about the scene of Trong Hu Boy and her mother hugging each other in tears, he felt a bit worried. Aunt Hoang also had her doubts. But in the end, she chose to stay silent. Perhaps for her, as long as she could continue to live with her daughter, nothing else was important. While immersed in thought, suddenly a warning appeared. Someone broke into the territory of Nen Tan Fu, wanting to send ghosts there to suppress it, yes or no. Du Bin immediately chose yes. He also guessed who that person was. The Uy Tri family's people were also really fast. Last night they broke through his barrier to save Uy Tri. Today they found him at the door. Suddenly a prompt appears, the pressure is completed. 25 little ghosts are captured, and fear value is received. 30,000, reward money, 50,000. Pay attention. Activate the little devil protection function. Do you want to catch the little devil? Du Bin spoke his mind. It seems that now we can divide the bodyguards of Ghost General level and above to people in Nen Tan Fu. Then give one to Mother and one to Aunt Hoang. Du Bin waved his hand and immediately turned off the system panel. He said that Hu Boy was a ghost, and when faced with danger, he could escape to the underworld. There was no need for her. He picked up the phone and said he should call the Ui Tri family. The other end of the phone immediately said, "Du Bin." Du Bin smiled slightly and asked, "Lieutenant Tri, the 25 people you brought here. I received it. Are there any other tricks?" At the other end of the second, he was so angry that his throat was choking. Du Bin frowned. Du Bin reminded, "If you have no more tricks left, then it's my turn. Open the door. The guests are about to arrive." Ui Tri's shout rang out, "Hello, Du Bin. Please speak clearly." He sweated and asked, "What kind of guest is this?" Suddenly there was a banging sound on the door. A scream came from outside. "Just a few people wanted to stop me." The scream startled Ui Tri and Ui Tri and Gao Thin. The door opened wide. A person with a bruised face rushed inside with a scream. Big Boss Black walked in arrogantly and shouted, "Where is Ui Tri and Gao Thin?" Ui Tri and Gao Thin was surprised. "Boss Black, and Old Tai, why are you here every day?" Elder Tai quickly got to the main point. "This is the contract and the lawsuit petition. You can keep it and read it slowly. From now on, the Ui Tri family and I no longer have any relationship." Boss Black also agreed. "Yes, I also came to inform you. I won't do business with you anymore." Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin asked in panic, "Why?" Boss Black pointed straight at Ui Tri, who was sitting in a wheelchair wearing a cast. He shouted, "Why? Because of him. Because of your son's plan to harm the little Du family. Your grandfather won't do business with you anymore." The guy wearing glasses ran in to report urgently, Mr. Sao is here." Mr. Sao quickly walked in with a very serious expression. Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin approached Mr. Sao. He immediately flattered him. "Sao, what wind brought you here?" Mr. Sao raised his hand to excuse himself. "No need to say anything polite. I came to tell you that the last time I signed a contract to sell you those materials, I won't sell them anymore." Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin bluntly said, "What?" He quickly wanted to hear the reason, so he asked, "Could it be because of that guy Du Bin?" Mr. Sao replied directly, "Not wrong." He frowned and said, "Little Du Jia saved my life. Your son wants to take his life. Of course I will not do business with your family anymore." Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin was even more confused. He tried to hold on. "Elder Sao, we signed a contract. If you break the promise, you have to make up for that contract." Mr. Sao was extremely decisive. "It's just money. I'll pay you in full, and specifically, I'll ask a lawyer to discuss it with you." Elder Kai rubbed his hands and said to Mr. Sao, "Mr. Sao, I was worried that if he couldn't deal with the little Du family, he would deal with his family, so I wanted to go there and make arrangements in advance." Mr. Sao agreed right away. Then he turned around and finished, "So if everything was discussed, I'd leave too." Mr. Sao clasped his hands behind his back and walked out of the Ui Tri family. As he left, he did not forget to raise his voice, "In this place, I don't want to stay anymore." Mr. Sao's words and actions frightened the entire Ui Tri family. At this time, the phone suddenly emitted the arrogant sound of Du Bin. "What's wrong? Ui Tri family, do you like the big gift I gave you?" At Nen Tan Fu Villa, Du Bin's house, he was shooting a basketball when suddenly a notification sounded from his phone. Du Bin used a towel to wipe his sweat. He picked up the phone and answered, saying hello. Trong Hu Boy gave water to Du Bin. The other end of the second said at the same time, "Little Du family, I am Lieutenant Tri and Gao Thin." Du Bin listened while receiving the water that Trong Hu Boy gave him. He asked, "What's going on?" The other end of the second said, "Last time you told me to find a magician named Gun Koi Lak. I found it. How should I deal with him?" Du Bin said calmly and brought him to my house. He smiled softly and did not forget to recall the old story. The last time he sent someone to cause trouble. I think he still remembered. At the other end of the second he understood what had happened and immediately replied yes. Trong Hu Boy closed the lid of the water bottle and asked, "Does someone want to come and cause trouble with you?" Du Bin appeared steadfast and calm. "Don't worry. Wait until I finish solving these things. You don't need to hide in my house anymore." Trong Hu Boy shyly whispered, "Actually, this is also very good." Du Bin didn't hear her clearly, so he asked again, "Hu Boy, what did you say just now?" Du Boy quickly said, No, nothing. A car stopped on the side of the road, the car door opened. From the car 2 men wearing dark glasses stepped out. They were escorting Gun Koi Lak. He was blinded but still in a daze. He paused for a moment and wondered, who are you guys, daring to arrest this magician? A guy wearing dark glasses kicked Gun Koi Lak's ass and cursed, shut up. Gun Koi Lak fell face down on the ground, he cried out. Since when has Diu Bin stood in front of Gun Koi Lak? He said with satisfaction. You guys acted quickly, let me take a look, seeing Diu Bin and Gun Koi Lak as if they had encountered a natural enemy. He said loudly in horror, Diu Bin. 2 guys wearing dark glasses bowed and said politely, Little Diu family, Gun Koi Lak have been brought here, we will go first. Diu Bin hummed, you guys have worked hard. Gun Koi Lak angrily shouted, Diu Bin, took advantage of the time I was drunk to find someone to secretly attack me, what a coward. Diu Bin let out a loud noise, he looked surprised and crossed his arms and asked again, he meant I wanted to rape him. How are you? Diu Bin snapped his fingers. The lightning around Gun Koi Lak's body opened, he said, then I will give you one more chance to escape. Gun Koi Lak caught the opportunity, he immediately ran towards freedom. Behind a cloud of purple smoke exploded, Gun Koi Lak screamed, and the ghost of the fog rose. He turned to continue running and then thought to himself, you idiot, if you casually provoke them, they will attack you, what an idiot. Suddenly, a whooshing sound like a windcar rang out. Diu Bin rushed forward and stepped on Gun Koi Lak under his feet. He smiled scornfully, even if he gave you a chance, you still couldn't run away, you're such a waste. Diu Bin crossed his arms to provoke, why are you still running? Gun Koi Lak shook his body, he tiredly asked, I have no resentment or enmity with you, why did you arrest me? Diu Bin looked down on the other person and said, when you hurt me 5 times 7 times, why didn't you think of it? There is no resentment or enmity between us. Gun Koi Lak quickly defended, what are you talking about, why don't I understand anything? At the same time, he thought to himself, maybe he can only use that trick. Diu Bin raised 3 fingers to compromise, answering me. 3 problems. The first question is, where is Master Lu? Second, who do you work for? Third, how many things have you caused because of dealing with me? Gun Koi Lak was shocked, then he suddenly clutched his chest and screamed. Go up. Amid Gun Koi Lak's groans, Diu Bin didn't care much and asked, what's wrong with you, do you want to do another trick? Gun Koi Lak's eyes widened, then he rushed forward, not forgetting to scream. Watching the sky, Diu Bin immediately grabbed his wrist. He angrily shouted, childish game huh? Gun Koi Lak changed his move, destroyed always great, from his hand a purple smoke was released. Diu Bin was surprised by this strange smoke. The smoke appeared with scary demon faces. It wrapped around Diu Bin's body and Gun Koi Lak's screams rang out. Kill demons yourself. Gun Koi Lak jumped out of the purple smoke. He immediately spat out a stream of black blood, then he coughed uncontrollably. Gun Koi Lak wiped the blood from his mouth and said, although Lia Hua always needs to sacrifice his life, this kid is very evil, if he doesn't do that, I'm afraid it will be difficult to escape. He looked arrogant, the kid damn, when he was called Heavenly Master, you were drinking milk, fighting with me. Inside the demon's body, horrifying faces continued to appear. Diu Bin looked at his hand, he worriedly thought, even King Diu's golden porridge could not stop these ghosts. Moreover, I just touched my hand for a moment and my arm lost its sense of touch. What exactly are they? Suddenly the purple smoke shrunk, it transformed into the shape of a terrifying demon. Then it went straight into Diu Bin's body. He felt like he had lost his senses and screamed. The purple smoke disappeared. Diu Bin knelt down on the ground, panting. Suddenly, a warning appeared. La ghost possessed a damaged soul. When the warning disappeared, Diu Bin completely lost his strength. The purple smoke gradually dispersed in the wind, and a pair of feet quickly ran towards it. Captain Lang called out straightly. Tiu Diu, the person who was in contact with Captain Lang, heard it and immediately asked, Tiu Diu, what's wrong with him? Captain Lang knelt down to feel Diu Bin's pulse and replied, There was no skin injury, but he fainted. To Miss Nunn, do you want to come over and check? The other side immediately gave an order. You did not control the scene. I immediately went over there. Captain Lang picked up Diu Bin and said yes. The scene changes to a certain room. Mak Ti Gao looks at the director examining Diu Bin. She asks in panic, Uncle Trong, how is he? The director shakes his head and says, not very well, his body is not injured. Injured, but lost consciousness. Perhaps his brain was damaged. It's best to take him to the company's hospital. Why is he in a coma? We need to find out clearly. Mak Ti Gao was speechless. La Suyen was behind her, staring at her. La Suyen sees off the dean. Dr. Trong, I'll see you out. Mak Ti Gao took Diu Bin's hand. She lifted his hand, tears rolling down her cheeks, saying with a sad voice, Mr. Diu Bin, please come quickly. Get well soon, I'm very worried about you. A drop of water appeared in the dark sky, it fell to the underworld. Suddenly, a drop of water fell on Diu Bin's face. He suddenly opened his eyes and gasped. Diu Bin saw Trong Hu Boy and immediately asked, why are you here? Before Trong Hu Boy could wipe away his tears, he quickly responded. I don't know either. I was afraid they would find out, so I hid here. Just a moment later I saw you lying on the bed. No matter how much I called you, you wouldn't wake up. Diu Bin immediately pressed open the system panel. One hand tightened his shirt around his chest. The other hand searched the system panel. At this time, the system board appeared. Mission content: extermination of the demon land, recovery of remaining souls, mission difficulty, level 12, displayed by the system. If the soul leaves the body for 24 hours, it will not be able to return to the body, so take advantage of the time to complete the task. Counting down the mission time, the system board shows the remaining time. Trong Hu Boy said worriedly, there is something outside. La Ghost cried. Jiang Vong and Tan Quang Vong were always guarding the main hall, preventing them from breaking in. Diu Bin replied succinctly, is that so? Trong Hu Boy asked in confusion. But those ghosts did not actively attack Nen Tan Palace. What were they doing as enemies? Diu Bin turned around and put his feet on the ground. He did not answer. My question is just to tell you to wait in the room. Then he said, he was going to negotiate a solution with the king of hell of the two palaces. Trong Hu Boy obediently agreed, be careful. The main hall of Nen Tan Fu, the evil spirits are raging outside, inside the palace of Qin Quang Vong. And so Jiang Vong kept saying aunt. Diu Bin, who had been waiting for a long time, spoke up and asked if the two of them had discussed the plan yet. Qin Quang Vong replied, Li Ghost always takes this body as a sacrifice. The devil is called to specialize in restraining negative spirits. We cannot intervene, unless, Diu Bin immediately asked, unless what? Qin Quang Vong replied, unless you have a judge's pen. Although the judge's pen belongs to the judge of the underworld, it is a positive thing. Perhaps it can deal with them. Diu Bin clicked on the system panel, he flipped through it. Said, there is no judge in the city. So Jiang Vong suddenly said, Chi. Tan Quang Vong immediately remembered the key point. Oh, you're right. Tan Quang Vong explained further. It's okay if you don't have a judge's pen, as long as you can learn the judge's instructions, then you can deal with them, Diu Bin exclaimed. He quickly flipped through it, mumbling while looking for him. The judge points out the Dharma, The words, judges point out the Dharma, appeared. Diu Bin shouted, he found it. The judge's instructions immediately flew into Diu Bin's head. When he received all of this set of methods, he couldn't help but feel proud. It wasn't difficult. The door of Nen Tan Fu opened and Diu Bin walked out in the cheers of the two kings of hell. Keep fighting. A soul quickly appeared behind Diu Bin. He immediately noticed, turned around, made a noise and then unleashed his attack. He pointed right at the center of this soul's face. A bright light emitted, and the soul quickly dissipated. The system prompt pops up. The soul retrieved is 1 out of 100. He looked at the power on the hand and said, but he did not expect that regaining his soul would increase the power of the judge. He waved his hand to perform the judge's command, confidently speaking loudly, come. A whooshing sound like tearing the wind rang out. The move aimed at the souls that wanted to advance. Then the souls gradually disappeared. At this time, only Dyu Bin was left, and the power of the judge was increasing significantly. The system pops up again with a prompt. The soul has been recovered 100 out of 100. The mission is completed. All judge orders have been received. All ghost wheels have been destroyed, and the currency is 100,000. Suddenly Dyu Bin was suspended in midair. He shouted, "AAA, why did you suddenly force the transfer? I haven't seen the mission reward yet." Through the glass window, one can see the clear sky outside, the full moon shining throughout the space. Dyu Bin woke up sweating. He looked down and suddenly called out, "Ti Gao." Dyu Bin used his hand to gently brush Mak Ti Gao's bangs. Mak Ti Gao was accidentally awakened. She rubbed her eyes and snorted softly. Seeing Dyu Bin, Mak Ti Gao immediately woke up. She said with a happy voice, "Mr. Dyu Bin, you're awake." Dyu Bin gently asked, "Why are you here?" Mak Ti Gao lovingly replied, "I heard something happened to you, so I came here immediately." She looked worried and asked, "Grandpa kicked Dad out of the Mak family. Do you know about this?" Dyu Bin was startled. He lied. He didn't know. At the same time he was wondering in his heart, did Mr. Mak do that for himself? Mak Ti Gao pouted and said what he knew. "I went to listen and try to find out. My father always sent people to chase after me. He also said that the dangerous times I almost lost my life in the past were also done by him, Dyu Bin." I was so startled that I could only say yes. Mak Ti Gao crossed her arms angrily, huffing and puffing. "Everyone hides everything from me. But I'm not a child. I have the right to know the truth." Dyu Bin heard that and quickly said, "Sorry, I didn't mean it. I'm just afraid you'll be heartbroken if you find out." Mak Ti Gao secretly looked at Dyu Bin and said, "Next time don't hide it from me anymore. This time if you don't discover the situation is wrong and ask team leader Lang to come to my house to take a look, then I'm really in danger." Dyu Bin agreed immediately. I remember." Suddenly you asked, "Yes. Where is Gun Koi Lak?" Mak Ti Gao thought for a moment and then answered, "Are you saying someone harmed you?" "Miss Nun and group leader Lang showed me the camera. Now go arrest someone. They said if anything happens they will contact you." Dyu Bin hesitated without saying a word. He touched the phone to call Ti Gao, picked up the phone and said, "Please go out for a moment. I'll make a phone call. There are a few things that need to be taken care of." Mak Ti Gao immediately replied, "Okay, then you can go out." Dyu Bin lay down and called the phone. "Hello." Scene changes to Ui Tri family's bedroom. A loud scream broke the silence. Dyu Bin, Ui Tri dressed in a dinosaur costume and quickly sat up to answer the phone. "What do you want? My dad has already captured Gun Koi Lak and brought it to you. You really have an undisturbed spirit." Dyu Bin was on the other end of the line. Unhappy, he said as if to order, "Stop talking nonsense. I'm looking for you for something else. Give me the phone number of Super Tan Tin's advisor, Grand Master Ho." After finishing his work, Dyu Bin pressed to turn off the call. He placed the call. I picked up the phone and thought about a few things. I'm afraid only he can answer my questions. Suddenly, she gently asked, "Are you Ho Tien Sin?" Hearing that, he bowed and clasped his hands respectfully, replying, "I'm sorry." After that, the two of them started walking into the house. She smiled. Said, "Mr. Ho just went this side." At this time, he also refused to settle down and turned to look inside and outside, thinking to himself, "It's a pity that this good piece of land has feng shui treasures arranged haphazardly." The door opened and Master Ho suddenly exclaimed, "Look at your mood, why is it so bad?" In that room was Dyu Bin. Seeing his brother, he pointed to the opposite seat and said, "Master, please sit down. I have encountered something that needs your help." Master Ho slowly approached the place where he was sitting, forcing his mouth to scream. Sitting in front of Dyu Bin, I noticed carefully that his face had become haggard, with dark circles appearing under his eyes that looked lifeless. "You said tiredly, before you asked me if I had encountered any miracles, was it really like this?" Master Ho suddenly nodded and smiled calmly as he said, "Hearing you say that, all my previous doubts were answered." No wonder you don't understand the theory at all but can use powerful magic? Hearing him say that, his face suddenly became serious. Recently, I have gradually realized that learning yin and yang magic is very necessary, so I want to ask Master Ho, is there any way? Hearing his question, Master Ho smiled and replied, if the little Dew family doesn't mind, I can introduce you to my master. With your strength, you don't need to officially worship the master and get a number. Heard that. With these words, he was finally able to breathe a sigh of relief. His face became brighter and he said, so I'm bothering Master Ho. Suddenly his hand clasped my hand and cried happily, but before that there is one thing you must agree with me. He took my hand and said with a pleading voice and a cheerful face, can you let me rearrange this house of yours without wasting heaven like that? I really can't see it. Seeing this image of him, he was truly helpless. He could just do as he pleased. He couldn't help but feel surprised and think that Master Ho was truly an enthusiastic person. At this time, in the study room of Mac Suyen's house, a voice suddenly came out, Mr. Mac, you don't need to worry too much. It turned out that those words were from Tai Lao. He faced Mac Suyen and gently continued, Gun Koi Lak doesn't understand everything. Even if he is arrested, it's okay. He clasped his hands behind his back and slowly approached as he walked and spoke. He spoke so softly. Suddenly he gritted his teeth and growled in anger. Lao Datu didn't know what he was drugged because of that damn kid and chased me out of the house. Hearing his words full of resentment, he began to approach and proudly exclaimed, Mr. Mac, since Master has said so, then we will definitely kill that guy Diu Bin. His face began to turn cold when he heard his words and responded doubtfully, relying only on him. He started to show a mean look on his face and started talking in a smug tone. Before that, because of something, he had to avoid my tricks and use them all to kill him as easily as killing an ant, but... Hearing this, he was worried and asked again, but at this moment, the two of them stood close together and began to discuss with each other. Wanting to kill Diu Bin required the young lady's cooperation. After hearing his plan, he began to push up his glasses and said cunningly, I'll call and tell Ti Gao to come over here and hope you don't disappoint me. At this time, in Diu Bin's study room, he was studying diligently with a small notebook, his worried face muttering about the world and the universe. Suddenly his phone vibrated. A call from a stranger made him startled and looked up. He picked up the phone and heard a pitiful voice on the phone, Diu Bin, help me. Hearing this voice, his face panicked and he shouted loudly 2 times Ti Gao. Suddenly, the other side suddenly hung up, leaving him speechless and blankly looking at the phone that went, tut 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 tut. He suddenly threw out a piece of blue paper and shouted loudly to go to the Thien Li mansion to track down the location. At this time, in the suburbs, in front of a large house, he pushed the door open with a solemn face and entered. Entering the house, he quickly turned on the switch. He suddenly turned into a large screen that controlled him. He said, why do you always use this trick? Do you think you can scare me by not turning on the lights? He immediately used blue flames to light up the stairs where he walked. Suddenly a pitiful cry came from a room, causing him to pay attention and be alert, shouting loudly, Ti Gao, are you in there? Suddenly a voice shouted from the room mixed with fear. That voice cried out pitifully, Mr. Diu Bin. Mr. Diu Bin saved my life and they wanted to harm me. As if he was crazy, he ran to turn the doorknob. He was worried as he tried to open the door. He shouted that the door could not be opened. Ti Gao, please step back and I will immediately come to save you. Having said that, he used his strength to kick the door aside. Ti Gao was now chained by his upper arm on the edge of the bed. When she saw him, she suddenly burst into tears, her voice trembling, calling out your name, Mr. Diu Bin. He quickly ran back and calmly took off the handcuffs on Ti Gao's hand, constantly comforting her. Why are you here? Who wants you? Harm me. Suddenly she crawled into his arms and cried. Seeing that, he gently hugged her and cooed to comfort her and said, okay, don't cry anymore. Suddenly a hand came out along with a voice. Mr. Diu Bin. From a distance, that girl looked very similar to Ti Gao. She quietly clenched her hands, walked closer and asked Mr. Diu Bin, are you here? Hearing this familiar voice, he suddenly turned around in surprise. On the other side, seeing that, Ti Gao sobbed and raised her head to look at him, saying in an unjust tone, "Mr. Ju Bin, don't believe her, she wants to harm me." Seeing that, he was momentarily stunned and silently looked at her with a puzzled face. That voice is getting closer and closer. "Mr. Ju Bin, where are you?" Now she was gone.